panel discussion today is about the art of aging. It will delve into the creative, healthy aging and touch upon themes around creativity and dementia, including discussing experiences from Cogworks. The questions to the panelists and discussions will be interspersed with a few videos and experiences from other parts of the country, sharing their work in the space of creativity in aging population. I hope you have a good time with this space. With that, I'm just going to welcome Jwala on the stage and take it forward from here.
Panelists on the stage, please. We have Dr. Matthew Verghese, who is a senior professor of psychiatry. We have Maitri Gopalakrishna, Pallavi Chandar, who is a creative artist therapist, Jimmy Xavier, who is a caregiver and a voice artist. Anywhere, please sit anywhere. So I'm going to allow the panelists to introduce themselves for a minute. I'm Jwala Narayanan. I'm a neuropsychologist, and I've been with the Cognitive Neurology Clinic for close to 15 years now. We work in the space of neuropsychology, neurology. Dr. Ratnavali Yellochoisala leads the center. And we've been doing a lot of work with dementia, a lot of our research work. And for the last 5 years, we've been running a group session for patients with dementia called Cogworks. And we've been experimenting a lot with the arts there. And that's how I got introduced to Maitri, who's joined us recently in helping us with the arts program. And it's been wonderful so far. And we will share some of our work. And I just like Maitri to introduce herself, and then the other panelists will introduce themselves.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Maitri Gopalakrishna. I'm a drama therapist and a counseling psychologist and a practice researcher. It's been really a wonderful experience to collaborate with Cogworks. I'm currently the founding director of the Foundation for Arts and Health India. So we work in different areas, and Fahi's general ideology is how can the arts be an accessible and effective health resource to individuals and communities. And one of the places that we work at is Cogworks, and where we work with patients who have dementia, and we will learn more about the program as we go on today.
Dr. Matthew Verghese, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Matthew Verghese. I'm a psychiatrist, and I've known Jwala for a few years because of the work, sort of common people who have families and clients who have dementia. So I've been working in the aging space for about 30 years. I spent about 40 years at NIMHANS and then got discharged a couple of years ago. And then I decided to get rehabilitated at St. John's. So I started the geriatric psychiatric clinic at the St. John's. So that's my work. And then I've also been working for the last 30 years or so with families of people who have chronic mental illness. So both schizophrenia, bipolar, and then now for the last 20, 30 years for people with dementia. So that's my area.
Thank you, Dr. Verghese.
Hi, I'm Pallavi. I'm an artist and a creative arts therapist. I work with the Foundation of Arts and Health India with Fahi. And I hold the creative aging program at Cogworks in terms of designing it and creating activities with artists who come into the space.
Hi, my name is Jimmy. I'm primarily an entertainer. I used to host a radio show till about a month ago, and now I'm on my own. Primarily here as a caregiver for my mother. Dr. Jwala helped treat my mother when she came out of COVID and she had a stroke, and a rare condition that only actually Dr. Jwala was able to tell us. So she's been the magician in our life in that sense. I learned a couple of things from the theatre guys today about how to get a standing ovation before you even start the show, so thank you for that. Thank you for that. I'm also a theatre creator, so our current show that we're doing right now is called Project Magic. It's for kids 7+ and also for adults, primarily to discover the magic in you and the magic around you. So that's the play that we're currently doing. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy. And that's our great panel. So today we're just going to be focusing on our experiences of the influences of art-based therapy in brain disorders and to really promote creativity for healthy aging. So I'm not going to do too many slides. This is the only slide, and then we're going to have some videos. But I think when we think about creativity and the brain, there are two aspects to it. So creativity can have a direct impact on the brain, and it also lends itself to overall well-being. And I think it's quite important to understand this because it sets the rationale for why we're doing this panel. So it promotes neuroplasticity, it enhances cognitive skills, it boosts self-expression and cognitive reserve. So cognitive reserve is, it's sort of quite a hot topic now. It's this concept where we're realizing that the more we do something, it creates a kind of reserve that can then put off dementia. So something like education. So if you're educated, then you're more likely not to get dementia, or probably get dementia at a later stage in your life. Or if you're bilingual, then there is a higher possibility that you put off getting dementia. So is the same with creativity. And also, creativity itself lends itself to overall well-being. It helps reduce stress, and it also forms this bond and helps bring people together, as you will see from our videos as well. So I'm going to kick off with the first question to Dr. Matthew Verghese, just to ask you what you feel, how the creative pursuits like art, music, dance could help with older adults and also help people with depression or anxiety.
Creativity is something that has been used in normal people and also with people who have brain disorders like depression or mild cognitive impairment or dementia. And I think what it does in, say, normal people is that I think it sort of makes certain areas of your brain which are not being used so far, it sort of lights up different areas of the brain. And so what he spoke about as cognitive reserve is basically this whole principle of use it or lose it. So why does the doctor tell you to go for a walk? It's because you want to be using your heart and your muscles and your lungs and so on. If you are sitting idle in a place for a long time, the potential for your heart and your lungs and your body to work would come down. And you don't have a reserve. So that's the same thing that applies to the brain. Because if you work it, if you use it, if you stimulate it, then it's useful. So I think anything that you do, whether it is being creative or whether you're talking to people or socializing or doing puzzles or whatever it is, whatever you want to do, is something that will be useful for the brain.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Verghese. Maitri, I want to sort of ask you, from your experience, do you think art is for everyone or creativity is for everyone? Because a lot of the times when we try to sort of get people involved in art, a lot of them come, and this is older people saying that I've never done art in my life. So I was just wondering what you thought about that.
100% yes.
Okay. That's the answer I want.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a bit of a, there's enough evidence to show that we've been creative beings historically before we settled into communities and before agriculture. Every cultural practice that we have has some aspect of the arts interwoven, right? We've just had Navaratri and folks are doing Garba and, you have the Garba stars, but really everyone can do it, right? Or you're arranging dolls in impeccable installations, right? Or your duas have poetic value to them. Or, these are all just interwoven into our lives. But the fact that you asked this question is, to me, quite telling. Like you said, people, and maybe that's a bit of a failing in the way we look at the arts as something quite separate from life here, I remember being told at age 6 that I was not good at drawing. And therefore, I should not do that and I should do singing because I'm quite good at singing. And it's strange that you would tell a small child this, right? So the idea that we have here that you should do it only if you're exceptionally talented, right? Or that you are going to be able to make a career out of it, otherwise you just let it go. And I think that's the challenge here. So what we're realizing is that there's huge health benefits to the arts. Yeah. And actually how good you do, when it comes to the health benefits, how good you are at it actually doesn't matter so much.
Absolutely. And I think that's been our experience as well, that it's actually so intuitive that even though all these people come in saying, I've never done art and I can't do it, when they get into it, they're just at home. And I'll just play a video from that we've put together from just showing you what we do at Cogworks.
The choice of working with puppetry as an art form to engage with this group was made because of the many possibilities that it allows. There are elements of visual art, there is so much making and building with your hands. There are following patterns which can be repetitive and therefore soothing. There is, of course, the space of narratives and building stories that often reflected the lives of the individuals themselves. For example, one participant we discovered wasn't so interested in making the puppets themselves, but he really wanted to make the furniture, the miniature furniture for the puppets. And we learned later that he used to be an engineer. So there's not just cognitive stimulation happening, they're connecting to who they are, to the full lives that they've lived. This form therefore allows and evokes different strengths and abilities.
This is one of my favorite characters. When I am saying characters, because I really mean it. Now I am only talking about Flexo and nobody else.
Okay.
So it will be only him.
Alright.
Maybe I would also like to keep it very neutral, so I will call it it.
Sure.
We all know it's after all a puppet.
Yes, yes.
That's lovely, Sarah.
So Pallavi, just coming to you, I think flow well from this video. What do you think are some of the therapies, like creative therapies, that really work with older people or older patients?
When it comes to using the arts, I think exploring all different forms of arts really work, and that's something we're exploring. So one of the ways in which we've structured the process of arriving at the activities has been really important. We invite artists who we call as artist facilitators, and so they come in with their expertise and their knowledge of the art form, and together we look at designing activities that are appropriate for the group. So there's a process of actually breaking it down into smaller segments, and then seeing within those segments how can we make it more simpler. So we work, it's been important for us to work with an artistic frame that looks at the strengths and capacities of the participants. That way, they lean into actually doing it and they have fun, and it brings out this aspect of spontaneity and playfulness, which is actually quite regulating. And the overarching aim for all the activities we've tried so far is really taking off from what we've learned from you, which is make sure there is cognitive stimulation, there is mood regulation, as well as social interaction. And with these being the anchors, we've been exploring all the different activities.
That's great, thank you. And Jimmy, I was just wondering, you as a caregiver, and I think your mom especially is a creative person herself. How do you think that helps her deal with her problems that she's had or what she's gone through? So Jimmy's mom had a stroke, and she's also someone who suffered with depression for many years.
Okay, so before I get to that, I just want to add to what Maitri was saying. Contrary to what happened to you, my music teacher told me you sing with a lot of feel, but there's no tune, so don't sing.
Yeah, same here. I was asked not to sing.
Not to sing, yeah. And when I do creative workshops, and when I ask people, how many of you think you're creative, very few hands go up. But the moment I ask them, how many of you have said a lie, all hands go up. Because what you've done when you've said a lie is you've created something. So creativity is just that, right? You've created something, and it doesn't have to be mind-blowing or perfect or anything of the sort. Coming back to your question, whenever my mother has gone to Cogworks and created something, there's a spring in her step when she comes back home. The mood is lifted, there's a sparkle in her eye. She said, you know what, I made this, and her hands are dirty. She's got like paint on her clothes. And it's just lovely to see how, just being part of that community, so she looks forward. There are days when she's like, do I really need to go? And we said, yes, you need to go because, like you said, if you don't use it, you lose it. And she said, okay, I'll go. And then she comes back and she's like, good thing I went. So I have seen all the creative things that Cogworks does with her has really helped her, one, stay active, two, make sure that her brain's involved in some way, stimulated in some way, and the effect on her overall mood is quite telling, actually.
Okay, thank you. And I think this is something that, not just us, and I think different centers across India are trying to use arts in therapy. And I'll sort of play another video from Delhi. This is Samvedana, and they do something in a different way, but they also use the arts to engage.
Samvedana Care is a mental health and elder care organization located in Gurugram, dedicated to promoting active aging and dementia care since 2014. We firmly believe in the transformative impact of creativity on brain health. Our sessions incorporate art-based activities as a vital component of stimulation therapies for dementia. Mrs. Banerjee, a former business owner, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2021. Previously, Mrs. Banerjee was a vibrant and social individual who enjoyed Kathak dancing, watching cricket, cooking, playing games, writing in her diary, and staying informed about current affairs. Since participating in our art-based sessions, Mrs. Banerjee has shown positive changes. She has become more active and expressive, displaying greater awareness of her surroundings. She eagerly looks forward to the visits from our specialist, waiting to engage in various art exercises that have reignited her passion for creativity and social interaction. In her sessions, movement and music also played a vital role by encouraging physical movement to improve mobility. Music evoked special memories, and as care specialists, we always treasure the smiles that singing brings during our work. Through art, music, and movement, we enhance cognitive function and improve overall quality of life for individuals and families affected by dementia and mental health.
So, Dr. Matthew Verghese, I was just wondering, since we're talking now about clinical conditions, do you see a role of the arts in reducing pharmacotherapy, or at least, being something that goes with pharmacotherapy and reducing the need for it?
Yeah, definitely. When you talk about an illness like dementia, one of the hallmarks, in addition to people forgetting and not being able to do things in their life, daily activities, the other thing that happens because of this disease is that they might get behavioral symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And what is usually recommended for behavioral or and psychological symptoms, for example, it might be agitation, it might be just wandering, or it might be not sleeping, or might be getting aggressive, or it might be people saying that somebody is stealing things or whatever. Now, we have discovered that these things usually happen because for many times the patients don't have stimulation. Many times it's when somebody has got dementia, it's very easy for people to just leave that person alone. And sometimes people are scared that they don't want to do anything with that person because they don't know what will happen if they do something. So I usually recommend, and it's also something that is recommended, that all persons who have, all of us need a daily schedule, but most of people who have got a brain disorder, that they need to have some schedule, some timetable through the day. So if you schedule things, activities through the day, then there is a less chance that they might actually get bored or irritated, or they might do something to stimulate themselves, which might be to get aggressive. So rather than using medication is not the first line. I'm talking about medication which is basically sedatives or antipsychotics or antidepressants, which are otherwise quite not very useful in people who have got, say, dementia. Those are not like the drugs for dementia. These are drugs to control these difficult symptoms. Yeah. So that's a last resort, really. So I would say that you get the person engaged with different activities through the day, and that actually would also reduce the caregiver's own stress. Because if you know that your mother is supposed to have a bath at a particular time and feed at a particular time and then go out for a walk at a particular time, then you as a caregiver can work around that and say, okay, my mother is doing this or this, and that's a set time for that. All of us have schedules.
Yeah.
When people don't have a schedule, it's a problem. Many times, just to sort of also talk about the healthy aging part of it. Many people who are going to retire come and say, hey, I'm going to be 60 and I'm going to retire.
Yeah.
So I said, what are you going to do? She said, no, I'm going to just sit, read the morning paper slowly, drink my tea slowly, and then decide what I'm going to do, and then maybe take a walk sometime and all that. So I say, how long do you think you can do that? And then they'll say, yeah, I'll do it for some time. So then I say, how long do you think you're going to live? So they say, I don't know. Maybe people have the notion that after 60 you're going to die in 5 years or 3 years. So I tell them, are you going to do this for the next 20 years? Because it's quite likely you'll live for 80.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you don't plan what you're going to do after you're retired, and if you're just going to put your foot up and say, I'm going to sit in front of the TV and be a couch potato and not do anything, I mean, that's not good for healthy aging. It's not good for the brain. So, you saw during the pandemic how people are isolated. I mean, I've had so many examples of my own relatives who are in the 80s and 90s. They were just, shut up in the house because the police wouldn't let you go. You couldn't go and visit your mother who was living alone in a house. So they were stuck in a house, and many of us thought they were developing dementia because they didn't have stimulation, and they just didn't have any stimulation, and then just started forgetting and not doing anything, and then their daily schedules went awry. So I think being creative or doing things creatively, anything, like Jimmy said, even a lie is creative.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need any equipment to be creative. So being creative, being things which are different, being things which will stimulate you and stimulate other people is absolutely good for anybody.
Yeah.
Not just for people who have got an illness, but also good for all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Verghese. I think that's a very important point. And I think COVID was like a social experiment where we just knew what happens from isolation. Maitri, I was just wondering if we sort of extended this and said, what do you think the impact of the socio-economic sort of factors, and do you think we could bring that down with more preventive methods using creative arts?
Yeah, I mean, that's when you were talking about those people who are planning to retire at 60, I was just reminded of the fact that by 2050, 20% of our population is going to be over the age of 60. And this is a huge number. And it's the first time that there are going to be more people over the age of 60 than there are people under the age of 15 in India. And this is a significant thing for our population. So certainly, whatever we can do to keep ourselves healthy and stimulated, knowing that we're going to be living longer and as a population we're going to be aging, is profoundly important. And the arts have an incredible potential there. Yeah? And there are three ways that we largely look at the role of the arts in health. One is, of course, that in practicing creative pursuits and arts engagement in and of itself has health benefits. And this is something that is now being studied very widely by folks like the Epi Arts Lab, which you guys can look up if you want. It's a great, easy to access website. They've done this huge sort of epidemiological type studies where they've looked at large data sets that exist in many countries. There's a Lancet Global series that is happening at the moment, so we're looking at data sets in India as well. But this is like thousands of people, and these are longitudinal data sets, and they're looking at what happens with people who are engaged with the arts versus people who are not engaged with the arts. And one really exciting finding from there is that people who are engaged with the arts have a significantly lower likelihood of developing depression later on in life. And why this might be is also something that is being investigated. So we can imagine, right? One, there is stimulation, but also quite often when we are engaged with the arts, we're engaging with other people. And that's a great protective factor. There might be physical embodied exercise that is involved sometimes, and that's a protective factor. But largely what we're seeing is that it really helps us connect. It helps us connect to ourselves. It helps us connect to other people. And isolation is a real killer. So in terms of can the arts and creativity help protect us? Absolutely. If I might, two more.
Yes, absolutely.
The other two things and the one thing, so that is for a general population. The other bit is, of course, how the arts can be useful as sort of specific intervention for populations that might have an illness or that might have some sort of a health condition. And those are like what Pallavi was talking about, what we're doing at CogWorks, which are very specific, where we're looking at the arts targeting particular health goals, whether that is motor functioning or certain aspects of mental health goals. And the third bit that the arts can be an ally to health is, of course, with health communication. And those of you that watched the dementia film yesterday or plan to watch it today, or maybe that's happening at the same time. That's one example of how the arts are really helpful with communicating something that is complex in a way that it is accessible to the general public.
Thanks, Maitri.
Can I add something?
Of course,
to that?
please.
So I think it's important for us to create these creative spaces. I'll give you an example. So when I was traveling to see, for example, the Southeast Asian countries, say Taiwan, Singapore, or Japan, they have very large old population. So one of the interesting things that I saw there is that old people are alone at home. There's children are not there; they're living alone. So what happens in malls in some of these places is that the old people get together there in a space, open space in the mall. And then somebody plays music and then they play some things and there's some activity. So they're just there. They're just there that whole afternoon or that evening. And that's something, I mean, our places, public spaces like malls should be used for that. I mean, we only see young people in the malls, but we usually see old people in the malls.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I used to see in the old days, living in the south of Bangalore for the longest time, around the Jayanagar shopping complex, in the old days, you could see older people just congregating and just sitting around, just talking, laughing, doing something. I don't see that now because it's become too busy. There's too much of traffic. There are no footpaths. It's just those spaces have gone. So I think it's very important to, what I see now, which is rather heartening, is that Bangalore has many parks. So I see these parks in the morning, early mornings. There are yoga clubs, laughter clubs, just old people getting together and just doing something, Tai Chi or whatever. And that's a great thing.
Absolutely.
And I think people who go there, people who do that, it's a great way to socialize. It's a great way to learn something new. It's a great way to, so I send a lot of my people who have got dementia to those parks and say, okay, you may not be able to participate with everything that you do, but just go there.
Absolutely. And there's enough evidence. Yeah, there's enough evidence to say that just being in nature as well, or being in a creative space, also stimulates the brain. And this is something we did at Cogworks as well, where we took Cogworks into parks. We did about 3 parks across Bangalore and just invited the public to come in, and they all interacted with the art, interacted with patients, and you couldn't tell one from the other. So it's very easily possible, and we need someone to drive that initiative.
I think that's a really important point also about arts spaces. All of these studies which are being done mostly in the UK and the US are also looking at people attending museums and performances. So the health benefits of the arts are not limited only to doing.
Yes.
Even receptively, you're able to have measurable health benefits over time.
Absolutely.
And to add to Dr. Verghese' point about creating spaces, also because it's so difficult to get out now because of the... but there are many apartments, and in my apartment I know that 2-3 people got together and said, we need to create a space for the older people. So twice a week, all people above 60 get together in the clubhouse, and they play tambola, they sing, they sing songs, and they just get together. And there is, in the community, in the older community, you can now see that far more people are going for walks together in the morning, and that's happening. So within the apartment space, this is something that can be done.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I'm just going to play one more video because I think it's quite an important one, and this is how Kathak has been used for patients with Parkinson's. And I think it's just relating to that second point that Maitri was saying about how, creative arts sort of lends to certain factors, which might be physical in nature, or it's cognitively stimulating, and that's how it helps the brain, or it helps conditions. Oops.
Having trained in Kathak since the age of 4 and empowered by my education at the Dance for PD Institute in Brooklyn, I founded Movement Mantra with one member in 2013. Now, with over 100 cases impacted, I continue to be fascinated by the amazing potential that Kathak has to alleviate the many challenges posed by Parkinson's disease, the world's fastest growing neurological condition today. Thinking and moving like a dancer logically applies to most aspects of living with Parkinson's. Using the brain consciously to guide the body is the basic tool of dance. And this is exactly what a person with Parkinson's now needs to do. That is, retrain the body to move via conscious and deliberate movements guided by external cues. Enough and more studies from the Western world amply demonstrate the neuroprotective power of dance as an adjunct modality to medication. I would love to share here 3 of the many inherent components of Kathak that target some cardinal symptoms of Parkinson's. Starting with Tatkar, the signature footwork of Kathak. This involves precise feet tapping to a rhythmic pattern. Execution of this act requires mindful weight shifting between legs, and this directly helps address a very challenging symptom, that of balance and stability. Padhant. This involves reciting out loud the dance syllables and compositions in rhythmic time cycles, accompanied by clapping of the hands to demonstrate the beat. This unique nuance alleviates speech impairment issues faced by about 90% of the PD heroes. Digging further into the Kathak repertoire, we have Navras, 9 emotions expressed through facial muscles. Regaining facial flexibility and emotional resilience dissolves social isolation, which is sensitively associated with Parkinson's disease. We all move with much grace and ease as dancers, not patients. The end result of any such session is therapeutic.
Okay. Before we open up for questions, I just have one last question for Jimmy. You're a theatre artist as well and a caregiver. And I think if we had to put art or creativity into practice every day, what are some of the suggestions you might have, and what have you done with Mum? And how do you think all of us here could probably just use it every day?
Actually, we create all the time. If we are more aware and mindful of the fact that we're creating, and just get involved in it. Like, for example, cooking is creating, right? You start from an empty platform, you have your ingredients, you put it together, and if you're the clean types, you'll clean up the platform, and you will find that from empty platform to empty platform, you've actually made something in the middle, right? So at every point, we have the ability to create and to do, it's just that put it in your schedule, like Doctor said, right? Put it in your schedule. And I'd just like to share something about a podcast that I heard. This is called Uncharted, and Uncharted, TED, not ERED. And it's anecdotal, but it was very interesting that they were looking at nuns who were above 90 years of age, and they found many nuns were still very sharp, and some weren't, and dementia had set in. And they analyzed the brains, and the people who were still sharp, the brains were a mess. Means they should have had dementia, but they didn't. And they found a box of letters, and they saw that the people who should have had dementia but didn't, when they were young, had written beautiful long letters with very interesting vocabulary. And they tried to correlate that and said that maybe this is something that you can do with kids and make sure they exercise and they learn and they use their vocabulary really well, which is very scary now because kids don't want to write. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. So now open.
Jola, before
yes.
you throw it open, I just want to say to the whole audience in terms of some information. I think Jimmy was referring to what is called as a nun
The nun
study,
study, yeah.
where they studied nuns over a period of time. That's just one community, but
Yes.
at least in the last 5 years, there's enough evidence that both from the Lancet Commission report and others afterwards, and then recently from India also, from the Lassie study, there are about 15 or 20 risk factors which are responsible for maybe producing dementia in the long run. But if you were to tackle these 15 or 20 risk factors, and some of them are diseases, for example, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, high cholesterol. Some of them are lifestyle things, for example, like social isolation, or having going for a walk or being mentally and physically active. Some of them are lifestyle, alcohol, smoking, and so on. Some of them are developmental and environmental, like isolation or spaces and so on. But if you were to tackle these 15 factors, you could probably reduce 50 to 60% of potential dementia patients in the future.
Absolutely.
And that's something that I want everybody to take away.
Yes.
And I think what needs to be done with this kind of program that we had in the last 2 days is we need to get the knowledge out to people, saying that you can do this. This is self-care. This is absolutely self-care. And if you say by self-care you can reduce 50 to 60% of the potential case of dementia in the future, I think that's huge. And that's something that a country like ours needs to do.
Absolutely.
We have to do it. And so we need to put that knowledge out there, saying that you need to know that this is what you need to do right from the time you start as a baby.
Yeah.
You can't do it when you're 60. You have to do it
Cognitive
right from the
reserve
beginning.
starts then.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's the message I want to.
Yes, great. Thank you very much. And we now open any questions.
Hi, thank you panel for such an illuminating and engaging conversation and thoughts. My question to you is, I'm going to turn 30 in a few months. I already feel scared about aging. Do you have any wisdom on how to not feel so worried? Because I keep reading The Art of Aging, and it is like a recent phenomenon, maybe a decade older. Before the internet, it wasn't so popular. So it's a little reassuring, but not so much either, because people keep pointing grey hair, ye hai, wo hai. I don't want to know it, but yeah, like not give cut eyes to people without. Yeah.
I think Dr. Verghese' last statement that he mentioned sort of speaks to your question, but is there anything more that you want to add to that?
I think this is something that I was thinking before coming to this panel, what is it that you can tell people? From 0 to 20 you can do certain things. From 20 to 40 you can do certain things. 40 to 60 you can do certain things. And 60 and above and 80 and above you can do certain things. So if you're 30, I would say what you can do in terms of being preventive is a lot of lifestyle factors. Being active, being physically and mentally active, meeting people, socializing, educating yourself in as many things as you can manage in terms of your brain, not working too long and using digital media less. I mean, these are all things that you can do when you're, and then watching what you eat, the toxins that you put into your body. These are things that people who are in their 30s and 40s can do.
Yeah, thank you. I think
Can I also, you go first.
I just want to add also, I'm I just hear you when you say that. I do. The anxiousness is actually building because of also the information we have around about aging, and I just want to invite all of us to think about also what are these ideas that have put into us, right? Like wrinkles are bad, white hair is bad, but what about just owning it and allowing for aging to also be not. Yeah, we don't have to be. It doesn't have to be put onto us, but we can really go into it by owning it. And I think there is an idea of aging that we might need to also kind of claim. And that's also a part of this process, I would like to say.
When you're younger, you want to do a lot of things, you don't have the money. When you're above 30, you have the money, so do them.
And the agency and autonomy. There's a lot of wonderful things about getting a bit older.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm really enjoying my 40s.
Okay, I'm going to cut short to the next question. Sorry, she had a question there as well. Okay, fine. Okay, sure, please.
Good morning. Good afternoon. And I'm really great for putting so much insight about dementia. But I just wanted to know, like a lot of has been said about dementia, and we know about dementia, but there's hardly anything being done for the people who are on the threshold of dementia. Because here's my husband who is just retired from the Indian Air Force as a group captain, and I feel that he is going to dementia. But when I looked for dementia agencies, those are helping like Nightingale and others, when I checked with them, and they said, sorry, we have place only for people who are suffering from dementia. So where will people like him go? And because I go to work and I see that, he's occupied, but being his nature, as you said, that it starts with the childhood. And I think in his case, it has started much earlier because he's not a socialized person when he was in the Air Force.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to cut you short there because we have other questions as well. But I get your point, and I'll take that question since this is my area. So there is Dr. Matthew Verghese is part of the Dementia Alliance, which is a network of dementia support that's going to come across the country. Cogworks in Bangalore is something that you can reach out to. And I think different cities across the country are doing their part in trying to do something for people with early stages of dementia. But I agree with you, there is not enough work, and that is an area that we need to do a lot more.
And simple answer to your question is anybody who is old and has various vascular diseases like hypertension, diabetes and so on, needs to be screened for memory problems and dementia. So Nightingale is for people who have got dementia and who have got serious dementia, and that's a residential facility. But most people with dementia can be managed at home. Most people with memory problems can be managed at home. So I think definitely you should go and meet a doctor and say, I want this to be checked out.
Okay.
Yeah, we can talk outside.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So when you say engaging in arts is a protection against dementia, how do you define engaging in arts? Is it listening to music? What is it?
Thank you for that question. It's actually a very, very broad definition in terms of what arts engagement has been. The definition of arts engagement in these studies that I referred to is a very broad definition. It looks at both receptive and participatory, which over populations, it says that you can do either receptive or participatory, and they both have value. But for an individual, I would say what interests you. Because if somebody made me do choreographed dancing, it would not be fun at all. It would be deeply stressful, and over time it would be detrimental to my health. So my question to you is, what is it that you enjoy? And you might have done it at some point in your childhood, you might remember. So for protective factors, I would say take the thing that you enjoy and go with it. And it doesn't matter. You can do a class, you can do it with other friends, you can do an online session. The mode has to be something that's practical and works for you, but go with what you enjoy.
Like Jimmy said, cooking is creative. Yes. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Don't have to do arts.
Gardening, huge protective factors.
My mom loves to sing, like at home, just playing music and sing, and that I know has actually helped her be in a happy and lively mood through the day.
I work in a primary healthcare center, and obviously my clients are all, working class and lower middle class. Where can I find facilities for them to have group activities like you were talking about? And I work primarily with stress, and I have reversed quite a few, marginal in hypertensive and diabetic cases. And I find a great need for them to have group activities. Where can I find this? My question.
Pallavi, do you have any?
I think my immediate thoughts are, if they belong to a community, is there a space where we can create there and for facilitators to come there? Yeah, we will talk after. Yeah.
And we'll do it.
Great. We have a question down here.
Thank you. It was really very wonderful listening to all of you. But after her question, I thought one of the solutions could be these senior citizen homes, where, many of them who have gone there have improved their health because they have activities that are common to all, and they have such a good time because they watch movies, all the arts are there, and they are really improving in their health. So I thought that is one more place where, and we are moving towards it, like lots of places.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And if I might just come back to your question, while we can do this, right, for 1, for 2, for 3, I think the question is systemic. Systemically, where can people access groups and sort of preventative modes of coming together, of connecting? I mean, how wonderful would it be if at the ward level there was a community arts center in every ward that young people could go to and older people could go to? I mean, this would be remarkable because so much preventative work could happen through those and bridges into mainstream health systems, right? So your question, I get it, it's systemic, and we have to think about it on different levels.
Thank you for your insightful sharings. It's been very helpful. My question is really to Maitri and Pallavi. Let me just start off by saying I'm an advocate of creative and movement therapies, both in my personal and professional space. Having said that, I know, and I'm sure you'll agree, that it can be triggering as well, especially if you're in a vulnerable population. Hence, the question is, how do you sort of, given the intent of CogWorks, when you plan your movement or your creative arts for the members there, how do you plan, or how do you sort of contain anything that's triggered and that could be triggered possibly?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. When we are at the planning stage, we really look at breaking it down and see aspects that are mostly strength-based. And so the participants are able to do. And in case there are some things that they are unable to, then we see how we can break it down. And in case things do get triggered, then we do pause, slow it down, see what else is possible. And especially in CogWorks, I would say that there are a lot of volunteers, and the entire process is supported by volunteers. So we do take it at a pace. And in case it's triggered, then we do stop, we do go back, we see what else is possible. The point of these activities is not to, you're not looking at skill or building, it is really the experience of it. And to a large extent, the participants have a choice. You do this or you do this. You can choose what you want to do, and if you don't want to do it, then it's okay, you can observe. To give you an example, one of them would just come and sit and say, like we've been talking about, I'm not very creative, I don't want to do it. Or some of them might even come in quite distressed because of traffic and just how much the sound affects you when you're traveling. So we do give it time. Sometimes we're playing very gentle music. Sometimes we're just holding hands and breathing until they feel a lot more settled to then start. And sometimes it does take time to regulate, and we'll see what is important at that point. It's not about the activity. It's really what's required in the moment. So yeah, it's quite subjective, but yes, yeah.
Thank you. like to thank our panelists and thank you all.